Well, Jesse, thanks for coming on the podcast, man.
I appreciate it, Alex. This is exciting.
We met maybe a year ago.
Just
through a friend, Jake.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I love what you're doing with all your mindset stuff.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. So where did you start your journey? I know you played basketball in high school.
Yeah.
And you were a college athlete as well?
So I played basketball at a good high school in Pennsylvania, and then went on to the University of Pittsburgh. At that point, I decided I wanted to be a student manager, so I became one of our undergraduate assistants. I'd always known early on that psychology was the path for me. I found a love for it in high school, so I kind of gamed it out that it made the most sense to be behind the scenes and be able to work with the coaching staff, be able to work with the athletes, continue to push them in ways that I had been studying. And so that's the path that I took, and then took off from there. Walking you through the steps, it kind of evolved after school into me starting a basketball training business, naturally figuring out my way back home. Got hit with
Philly?
This is in Philly, yeah. So I came back to Philly, started up that training business, grew that, and of course, got hit with COVID within the year. So COVID hit, shut everything down. That led to me not going back to school, getting the master's, the doctorate, being a psychologist for the Sixers. That was what I had game planned early on. And for the better, honestly, I've realized that that's a commitment. Like, that's a lifestyle commitment. And so I knew that I wanted to be able to help people more adjacent to business, because that's kind of where my life was headed. So yeah, that was the path. That's where I started, was more so in sports, athletic performance, sports psychology, organizational psychology, leadership development. Those were my majors, my degrees, my focuses, and just snowballed from there.
And what drew you to psychology in the first place?
Yeah, so, and I have one YouTube video addressing this a little bit, just going deeper into my life experience in early middle school, high school. In a big way, as far as the sports goes, I was never the star athlete by any means, and I've always found a passion for how I could help my more talented teammates perform at a higher level, and just kind of find a level of humility to where I could take a step back. And part of that was maybe a coping mechanism to find some security in the insecurity of not really being overly talented or anything like that, overly social by any means, a bit outcasted. And I had one particular teammate who I've talked about in the past, who came from the inner city, and him and I became really close, 2K before practices, all that kind of stuff. We kind of would bond a bit. And I knew that it was important for him to figure out, how do you go from playing in the inner city of Philadelphia, the ISO mentality, get out of the hood mentality, be seen by recruiters, to now coming to a suburban team who's one of the top teams in the state or even the country, and play within a team and really mold with everyone else. And so that was like a cool little experimental project for me. Not to take any credit for his success. I mean, that was just more of my own enjoyment of trying to say things the right way to him so he can frame his thought processes to, I talk about one specific vivid scenario where him and I are talking, we're going into the state playoffs, and of course, everyone knows in the state that he can go out and score 25 a game with his eyes closed. Like, that's just the type of player he was. He could score, that was clear. In the city, that's all that matters, is the me. How can I get him to play within the team and understand, some of our team dynamics, and more assists, more, rebounds, things that are considered a little more selfless, like assists, and, putting your body on the line and all these things. And most guys with that background have an ego, and you need to play into that ego. So it became, all right, my man, like, what about a triple double? How would that sound? Like, we know you could score 25. That doesn't mean shit. What about a triple double? Like, how would that feel to you? And I could see, like, I started breaking his ego down a little bit to where then I could build it back up in a way that resembled what we needed. So not to get too reminiscent, but that's kind of where it led. And I remember the next practice, after him and I having this conversation, I didn't even know that this happened. Our coach in our huddle says, yo, tell the team what you just told me before practice. He was like, yeah, guys, I want to get a triple double next game. And I was like, he remember that? Like, and so that was like, if I had to pinpoint one moment where I was like, fuck, like, I really made an impact there just through a little conversation. Like, that's kind of what started it all. Also, my uncle, like, growing up, big influence for me, is a psychologist or a licensed social worker. And so he kind of gave me the psychology bug, and I'd started studying it literally early high school, 9th, 10th, 11th grade, just all in, like in my spare time. So yeah, that's
Definitely.
that's how that happened.
Yeah, I think more specifically toward basketball, a lot of kids coming up these days are very focused on, and the NBA has gone toward this way, and that's why I like college basketball a lot more, because it's a lot more team play, college basketball. But they're very much so focused on scoring 20, 30 points a game, doing all this stuff. But when you come out of high school and you're going to college basketball, everybody scores 20 points a game.
Yeah.
It's who can do the stuff that people aren't seeing. And I tell my little cousin this, who's in high school playing basketball, you got to play. How about you try to play the hardest defense in the team?
Yeah.
Try to get the most steals. Try to get the most assists, like you said. Doing those kind of things on the court.
I love it. I love it. And it's like a lot of the intangibles too, like doing those things, but then regardless of whether you succeed doing those things or not, it's how can you maintain the right mindset, the right mentality around how you communicate with teammates in times of, high stress or things are on the line. How do you lead with some level of humility or all those things? It's the intangibles that are really hard to. Those are the guys that separate themselves. And so I mean, one person comes to mind for me who I had a really great honor of being able to be a part of the team at Pitt with, Cameron Johnson, who's now on the Denver Nuggets. He has really carved a path for himself, and I think in a big way, that's because of his humility, his intangibles as a teammate. So that's someone who sticks in my mind when I think about sports and the athletes that separate themselves. Not only is he one of the greatest shooters in the league right now, but it's that other stuff that I think separates him. Yeah.
And at what point did you say you want to start your own company instead of working for a psychologist firm, that you wanted to do your own thing?
I had always felt torn all along, I want to work for the Sixers. That would be cool. But in the back of my head, what I'd always said is I wanted to own a psychology, basically a sports agency grounded in psychology, being able to represent athletes, but provide them with the most elite sports psychology, performance psychology foundation that there was. And that was my vision. It was very tied to sports. Now it's taken a turn. I'd always known that I wanted to work for myself in some respect. I grew up, my dad owning our family business, and me, you would think that I wouldn't want to do that, given that I grew up with him really being in the office 16, 18 hours a day. And that's just how it was. But the autonomy, that's what always stood out to me. And so I knew I couldn't work for anyone
for sure
long term. Maybe I'm a contrarian by nature. I'm a troublemaker and all those things when I'm given rules to follow. So it was just recipe for disaster. Yeah.
Now your niche is a lot of C-suite executives, a lot of business owners. Do you still take on athletes here or there, or do you kind of just stick to your niche?
Yeah. So I do still take on athletes. One thing that I kind of had to make the commitment when I moved to Miami, I even still trained athletes in person, like basketball skills training. By no means am I the greatest skills trainer, which is partly why when I moved out of Philadelphia, I moved all my clients over to another skills trainer who I would say is a better skills trainer than me. But the reason why they came to me was for the mental performance, the psychology. How can I help these young kids be less fragile, or even with college athletes, how could I help them break through certain plateaus? So with that said, I cut that out really within the past year down here in Miami, made the decision I'm not training in person anymore. Who knows, if the right thing comes along, I might, but I will take on athletes as long as it's virtual, primarily virtual. So more so mental performance related sessions, not skills sessions. Yeah.
Now when you were training, when you were the psychologist for athletes, what would you teach your athletes that practice the same 3-point shot? Let's say a corner 3-pointer. They take 100 shots during practice, weeks on end. But then when it comes to 2 seconds left in the game, how do you help them get over that mental barrier to not tense up in that moment that they've taken the shot 1,000 times, to have the confidence to shoot it just like they did in practice instead of tensing up?
Yeah. So that's the tricky thing with muscle memory, is that you can have the repetitions. You can take the same corner shot 1,000 times, and that part is important, but you're training muscle memory. The idea is that when you're fatigued, that muscle memory still holds and you still can have the same follow through, this, that, and the other thing. But that added pressure, the adrenaline, all these other things that come into play when there's 2 seconds left in the game. One, really, really important component. And I think this applies in business, on sales calls, board meetings, all these other things. One important component that a lot of people brush off is the visualizations, the mental repetitions, because if done properly in the right environment, you can recreate some of those responses in a way where, one caveat I should add too, or not even a caveat, but one thing I should say as well, the brain can't differentiate real and visualized performance. So when you take that frame and you understand, okay, if I try to visualize 2 seconds left, it's like the kid with their little foam basketball, 10, counting down, like that shit's valuable. Like you're imagining yourself in that situation, you're visualizing that repetition in a way that's set in a certain frame to now you have a chance to elicit that response in your brain and your body, because the brain doesn't know. Like if you use the right breath work, if you use the right visualizations, you can basically trick your mind and body into thinking like, okay, maybe there is 3 seconds left in this game and all those things. And you can practice with that intention. So repetitions are one thing, but intentional repetitions are really what's going to separate people. Again, this transcends sports. So I think that's an important piece is just that the visual reps and remembering that on a neurological level, the brain can't differentiate whether it's happened or whether you've just vividly thought about it.
Okay, so can this also pertain to goals as well? Yeah. Someone visualizes themselves, let's say they're a broke college student. Can they visualize themselves becoming an extremely successful CEO, talking on a stage with 100,000 people, and then it actually happening? Yeah. More so than if they don't visualize that. Yeah. Do you believe that actually affects the track they have to that goal?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm going to make sure, and not to discount this side of the aisle, but I'm going to try to make sure not to answer any of this in like the woo-woo way, but it might come through that way. I just want to make sure that I ground it in science, because that's how my brain works. Yes, it makes a difference. There's a lot of things at play there. The things I could just rattle off the bat. We have confirmation bias. Like our brain wants to be right. We want to seek out things that confirm what we tell ourselves we believe is true. So the reticular activating system, in the brain, it kind of filters our reality and plucks out things that confirm what we're visualizing, what we're meditating on, what we're telling ourselves is true. That brings me in to just try to keep it concise, my framework of being to become, which is the idea. This is probably the most direct way to answer this question. The only way we can be the speaker, and funny you mention it, like one of my good friends is ripping as a executive speaker right now, keynote speaker, and I always am so inspired by my conversations with him, Juan Bendanya. But he's who I think of when you say that because of his story. But when you think of being a speaker, right? If that's your example, you're speaking to a bunch of executives or whatever the case is. What are the personality traits? What is the identity of the person that does that thing? Okay, most people will say, "Oh, here's that identity," and like, the only way I can get there is by doing this, and this, and this, and this, and it's so distant. And they have these thoughts of, I want to be X, Y, Z. Like, I want to be that person. And it's like pushing it so distant. The best way to do that and to get to that is to understand the identity, the actions, the habits of the person that does this thing, and start doing those actions, taking those actions, embodying those habits. Because the only way to become something, go through that process, that iteration of becoming, which is an ongoing, never-ending process, is to be that person first. And I've broken down the etymology of the words, and I get very kind of logical and nerdy about this stuff, but the etymology of what it means to be means to exist. The idea of being, human beings, we exist. You can't exist in the past or future. You can only exist in the present. So again, not to get the whole woo-woo crowd riled up, but the idea of existence means we can only do the things now, today, that we want to embody in the future. And so to bring this back to your question of meditation and all those things, and the brain not differentiating visualized or actual performance, if you want to be a confident speaker that's capable of speaking in front of however many people, you envision what it would look like for you to be the person that does that. So let me phrase this as a question. Let's get interactive here. When you think of doing that, or when you think of sitting in front of, let's say, in a year or two down the line, you have, I I don't know who's like an idol of yours sitting right
Alex
here.
Hormozy.
Alex Hormozy, perfect. Like, how would you conduct yourself to be able to have an interview with him that elicits the outcome that you want, or have that confidence or identity of being someone capable of conducting a positive interview with him?
I think one thing would be to be extremely knowledgeable on what he does, and to do a lot of great prep work and learn how to conduct an interview to the best possible ability I can.
Okay.
That would be one. And then also learning how to become a great public speaker.
Yeah.
Which is learning more vocabulary words, how to communicate better, stuff like that. I think those would be two big things.
Okay.
Yeah.
So circling back, your question was, how does someone utilize those meditations, or like the idea of meditation or all those things, and how can that be real? Just to clarify, that was the question, is how do you do that?
Yeah. How do you get the traits to become something, or how do you get the skills and the traits to become what you want to become in your future?
Yeah, repetitions. It's everything. And it goes back to sports as well. You need a pinpoint. I have what's called my performance freedom engine, which is kind of what I use to take someone from understanding where they want to grow and what career they want to have or whatever they want to be, and how to go through the process of being that person for the sake of achieving freedom. And that freedom means a lot of different things, but where that starts is with a skill. So in this scenario, you're imagining a certain skill. If that's public speaking, then maybe that means you imagine your posture, your tone, your cadence, like the tempo. Your breathing is probably the most important part of that. Visualize that skill, because it's a skill that is important to have and be great at to be a great public speaker. So you just pick one skill. Now you put in the repetitions to practice that thing. Maybe you're speaking in the mirror. Maybe you're getting on podcasts and learning how to speak, which I need to do a lot more of as well to really hone in that skill for myself. But take that skill, do the actual physical repetitions, but then repeat those same repetitions mentally through rehearsal, and visualize yourself doing that. Because again, your brain will begin to wire towards those actions, because it, A, doesn't know the difference, but B, our brains want to be right. We all want to be right. And that's a human nature. So if we use confirmation bias to our advantage, we say, okay, I am not I want to be a public speaker. Tell yourself that you are a public speaker. You are XYZ in the present tense. Your brain will then begin to wire itself towards confirming that is fact through perceiving certain things that filter through and confirm that it is true. Yeah. So that can mean so many different things in different contexts. But I think that's the premise that's the foundation of building up an identity, is just starting to embody it in the now. Mm-hmm. So that means meditation, repetitions, visual, physical, whatever. Yeah. So
a lot of your clients are salespeople and executive C-suite executives. Mm-hmm. They deal with a lot of rejection during sales. Yeah. So how do you teach your clients to combat rejection mentally?
Yeah, so this is so cliche. Like, failure is a part of the game. It is required for winning. So in the idea of sales, like if I were to tell you, you had to get 10 no's or 100 no's before you get this one yes, would you go and try to get those no's faster or slower?
Much faster.
Much faster.
If you know what the number to reach is, then you try to get it real fast.
Now the caveat there, of course, is that implies the certainty of a yes. That's the tough part, because how can you ever be certain? That's what you hear a lot of people saying, is no's are required. Chase the no's. And I totally am with that. But because certainty is not guaranteed, obviously, that only leads me to believe that everything needs to be reflected inward into your internal process. How do you present yourself on a sales call, or any of these things, so that you feel, no matter the outcome, that you are aligned with your process, with your offer, with the client, and what is best for them? That all needs to come from an internal alignment of knowing that you're sitting on an offer that you have conviction and clarity in, and on knowing exactly what the offer is, how your personal values and goals align with that offer, and then being able to then flip that around, and how do your values, your convictions, and all these things align with the needs of the prospect, of the client? Because just from my experience, I've been on offers where I found a way to make myself believe that this was a great offer, And then I would bring on I would close a client for, I mean, these packages were $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, where potentially some of these clients were investing their life savings into this product that at the time I had conviction in and I believed in. But then you step away and these doubts start to creep in. Oh, is this product good enough? And that was a result of my misalignment of just jumping into an offer because of the opportunity, not because of it being aligned with my goals, my values, my vision. And so the way that I approach that is you kind of alleviate all the unknowns because you solely focus on your internal alignment, your convictions. So it's all about what I call selling or converting through clarity, connection, and conviction. Having that internal clarity across the board of yourself, your values, your goals, of the offer, of the client's needs, the conviction to know that, and conviction comes through identity and confidence, inner self-confidence, to present this idea, present this offer with such a conviction, but calmness as well, so that the client's like, wow, this guy knows his shit. He cares about me. This is what I need. He's in my corner, but he's so confident. He knows his shit. Like, how can I not trust this? That's what builds the trust. And then you alleviate all the sleazy shit and all the close stuff. And I think that also prevents burnout. It keeps you more aligned. It keeps you like just smooth sailing. So, and then of course the connection piece is what comes as a byproduct of that, which culminates in the conversion, the close. Yeah. And with that, like, I'm a big believer in extreme ownership, extreme self-accountability. With that, how could you ever fear the unknown or be worried about the unknown of if they're going to say yes or no, if you know that every single thing along the way was totally aligned with who you are and how you need to operate? I think that, yeah.
Yeah. What are some of the main issues that either you had or some of your clients have the first 30 to 60 seconds of sales calls that tend to scare away clients?
Yeah.
Is it confidence? What is it?
Sometimes overconfidence can scare you away, but here's what I would say as well, because it's hard to say across the board. I mean, first off, if someone's too urgent, too needy, and either they don't build rapport properly or they don't kind of maintain their frame initially off the bat, either of those two can
What
cause...
do you mean by maintaining your frame?
So to be able to set frame and be able to get someone on a call, especially when you're virtual, I have a lot of prefaces that I could throw into this, but when you're virtual, a lot of things become trickier because 90% of our communication is nonverbal. I think Stanford came up with, it was a roughly 7% to 10% range of our communication that is built on words and words alone, which is, again, is part of the problem with all the sales trainers that teach scripts and objection handling and this. It's like, that's 10% of our communication. How can you focus everything on that? Obviously, when you're on a sales call, body language is a little bit more nuanced. Someone might not be looking at you. They might not see your facial expressions. That's why tone is really important. Pace is really important. You have to have a calmness to be able to communicate. Yeah, sharpness for sure. And that's part of where that conviction comes in. Yeah. So, all those things is important. But where people fail, it's like, I can pinpoint it to one thing, which is being tied to the outcome of the close, because immediately you can tell if someone's tied to, I need this commission.
Instead of trying to help the client.
Instead of being client-centered, So there's commission-centered and client-centered. Commission-centered obviously is like, all you care about is the fucking commission. Client-centered is, how can I provide the best transformation for this client? And I see, when I'm on a sales call, let's say I've done some consulting where I stepped in and closed for a company, I still don't see myself as a salesperson. I still embody my identity as a mental performance coach.
You're just a guy trying to help them. I'm not a salesman.
Yeah. I'm a guy that sees they are in this seat for a reason. They booked this call because they see a product that can potentially solve a problem for them. So that part's already done for me. I don't need to know. I don't need to guess whether they think this is valuable. They wouldn't be sitting here if it wasn't. So then my job is to clarify any misunderstandings on their end, understand like what they know, what they don't know, fill in the gaps, but more importantly, break down parts of their identity that are preventing them from taking action on something that can push them forward. And a lot of the times that's money scarcity. It's, all those things that a lot of us experience, myself for sure as well in the past. So it's about that. It's about understanding them and acting as a coach in the process to help them push them along on a decision, hold them accountable, call them out on their shit, whatever it takes, but done in a way where it comes from a place of authenticity and a level of clarity to where I don't need to force this on them. If we uncover all the details and they discover this isn't actually what I thought it was, or this isn't really what's best for me, then I'm not going to try to sell them something that's not best. So it's like that internal alignment that I think alleviates, a lot of that stuff.
For sure. And I know we went into it a little bit, but what would be the top 2 or 3 nonverbal body language things or tips that you would tell somebody to help them on their sales calls?
Yeah, that's a good one. I love that all this is sales related because I have some exciting stuff coming out specifically for high ticket closers and in that space. Ooh, that's a good one. So the nonverbal things, again, I'll name them, but I will also preface again, all of this stems from the alignment that I talked about, being able to upgrade your internal operating system to portray in a way that converts, right? Our nervous system communicates before our words do. And we know that because 90% of our communication is through tone, pacing, right? So that means your breath. If you're not breathing properly, if I were to try to talk to you at this pace and not stop and not take a breath, my heart rate would elevate, my blood pressure would rise, and I would get really jittery, and you would hear it I would crumble. Mm-hmm. And some people find themselves doing that in a sales call where they're just trying to go through the pitch of the product, and this is so good because X, Y, Z, and this is why you need it, and all these things. And then you're like 10 minutes later, they haven't said a fucking word, and you're burnt out. Like, why haven't they paid yet? Why haven't they closed? Why isn't this a PIF? And you're like wondering, why is this not working? Well, shut the fuck up. Like, slow down. I think silence is one of the best nonverbal tools there is. Because that shows a level of confidence. It shows a level of calmness. Caring to give them the space to speak. So silence is a big one. And I think that could mean cumulative silence, like total silence, or just like the more moments of space that you give between your words, the more opportunity they have to come in and either say something important, or sometimes the client might try to push you down the wrong path, and you have to be able to have the control or the frame to say, no, we're not going to go down there. Let's move in this direction. Mm-hmm. But it still gives you an indication on, are they ready for a hard close, or do they need to be kind of buttered up a bit more in a sense to, because if someone tries to steer you down the wrong path and you don't catch it, and then you just try to close them when they were just trying to lead you down a potential objection, then you're not as connected with them as you thought you were, and it's not going to convert. So silence is a huge nonverbal tool. I think, again, internally, to reflect all this towards the individual, the sales representative, posture is a big one. Posture will indicate how you conduct yourself, your energy. If I'm making myself small and I'm hunched over and I'm like trying to talk to this client, like
adjust my posture.
I'm not going to feel, I'm not going to feel, and I have shit posture, but I hope that cursing isn't a big deal.
No,
but
that's fine. As tall people, we tend to have bad posture.
Like, I have horrible posture. So, but if you can just bring your chest up, allow more air in, and just be mindful of that, it'll change your attitude. It'll change your conviction around, it just changes your energy. So I think that's a big one.
So breathing is pretty important too.
Silence / breathing, because silence gives you the space to breathe. Posture helps you all around. And I think tone is one that I focus on as well. Like when someone gets really pitchy, like up here, it just sounds needy. Like you think of like a pick-me girl, and they're like, valley girl. It's like, it's just needy. Just like, lower your tone, just like relax, let your vocal cords literally relax, because if you think about it, the looser your vocal cords are, the lower they get. When you speak in a higher tone, your vocal cords constrict. That's a little singing thing,
scientific.
But it's funny that I think of it. I don't drink alcohol at all, but alcohol does loosen your vocal cords, so I can imagine why some people will like take a shot before they go on and speak.
Actually, our producer Gene over here, he says one of his clients for the podcasting asked to have a Casamigos or a Casamigos behind that he wants to take a shot before he speaks.
I don't know whether there's some scientific backing in his mind. Hopefully, let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Yeah. He's a genius. But it does actually relax your vocal cords. So some people do it, but obviously singers, you want to avoid alcohol because you have more control when they're where they speak. But anyway, like I said, I can go on a few different tangents, but. Yeah, silence, tone, posture, like all those things, I think they're super important to be mindful of. And that can be improved through visualizations, through repetitions, or even reviewing your calls, putting in the reps that make you better. What does a top closer do? They review their calls. They catch in moments where they have bad tone, and
record, review.
Yeah, you can recreate. You can literally pause the video. You say something in a shit tone, pause the video, relax yourself, embody what it would mean to be in better posture, better breath, and say the thing again in the way that you want it to come through. Like, do the repetition. You might feel like you're silly doing this in a room by yourself, but like, it's important. And that's kind of what I take from the sports performance background, is because no shit, if a guy misses a free throw, they're going to stop. They're not one free throw, but like if something's wrong with someone's free throw, they're going to take a moment. They're going to figure out what they're doing wrong, and they're going to go and do the thing again until it's right. And they're not going to wait till the game or the playoffs to go and do that thing. So I think that's huge. And yeah, so many people just don't think twice about it. Yeah.
On a side tangent,
let's do it.
That free throw example you used, I play in many leagues in Chicago, and I'm not the best. I used to be very good at free throws, and I don't know what happened. I probably have like a 50-60% percentage.
Okay.
But there was a game where we were down by 2 with like 10 seconds left. I'm at the free throw line with 2 shots. And because I know how poor I am and how big the circumstances are, I actually just thought to myself, I'm like, I'm going to pretend like it's 10 minutes in the game.
Doesn't matter. Yeah.
I'm going to pretend like the game just started. I'm the first guy at the free throw line 2 minutes in.
Yeah.
Hit both.
Knocked them both down.
Tied up the game.
There you go.
Yeah. So it's just not even caring about what the circumstances are.
Yeah.
Just because I actually think, like, if you think the stakes are too high,
you're right.
You're gonna screw up. Like if you think the stakes are low, you're probably gonna act out better.
Yeah.
Like you were just visualize it.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. So I saw one of your pieces of content that could come off as controversial. Is do you think success? People fear more success or failure?
Yeah. I think without a doubt the answer is success, but most people won't admit it and they'll say it's failure. But it's just a facade. And maybe they consciously don't even realize it. But,
why is that?
But
why?
I think that most people fear success. Well, going back to just the way that we're wired as humans, our brains crave consistency, familiarity, comfortability. The only thing that no one will know until it actually happens is success. You don't know what it's like to be successful until you've already gotten there, at which point you've gotten there. You're not going to, you are where you are. That's your present. You're only going to think of a future success that you still don't know. Failure, you've either faced it. I mean, you could argue, if no one's ever faced failure before, then it's unfamiliar to them, so of course they're going to fear it. But we've all faced some sort of failure, whether we want to paint it as failure or whatever it is. We've felt that time and time again. Maybe you got rejected in high school by a few girls, or you didn't get the grade that you wanted. You didn't make your little league baseball team, like whatever the hell it is. You know what failure is. You know that it sucks and it's familiar. So it's easy for our brains to gravitate towards, I don't know what's going to happen. All the success, I don't know. I'm afraid to fail. I'm afraid to go try. But that's not what you're afraid of. Your brain knows what it is. So all it's doing is taking that familiarity and feeding it back to you as the reason why you're not shooting for more success. And it's staying in that safe space of picking the lesser of the two evils, because it knows what failure feels like, and it just stays in that loop of thinking about the familiarity versus taking a step out of that familiarity and thinking, well, what if I succeed? Holy shit. Well, then I have more eyes on me, more expectations, more people to take care of, more payroll, more family to support, like all these other things that why would you ever
success is hard.
Why would you ever look at that and be like, oh, what a fearful thing? Well, it is, because it's unknown, and our brains have no other way of coping with that than gravitate and grab the closest thing to it that feels scary but familiar, which is like failure. So it is scary. It's just not as scary as success.
Yeah. Hey guys, just to pause for 1 second. If you can subscribe, share, it would mean the world to me. I thank every one of you for listening to the podcast. You guys are the reason it's growing. Let's get back in the video. How do you feel when people call themselves perfectionists?
Yeah, I just made that nice little reel. You probably saw the reel where I said you were just coddled by by your parents if you call yourself a perfectionist. And the reason I know that to be true, well, there's a few reasons why someone might call themselves a perfectionist. Obviously, there's more nuance to it, but it's a similar construct of craving the familiarity and the things that are known to you. When you call yourself a perfectionist, all you're saying is that you're scared of what might be if you do something that you don't consider to be perfect, which usually comes, fear of judgment, fear of ridicule or ostracization, or what if they think of me? And there's usually ego at play there. Like, what if people think I'm less polished than I want to portray that I am? And all those fears kind of, the idea of working through that is a far greater evil or far more demanding task than this needs to be perfect. And then I won't have to think about that greater looming fear anymore. If I just get this one thing perfect, and then that repeats and repeats and repeats, because the brain will then crave what is the familiar thing, dive into my work, make it perfect. And I can disregard those greater fears of judgment and, lack of self-efficacy or whatever it is that people are facing. Like if there's anything that you're facing that sticks out to you, that that deep down you're dealing with, but then you just revert back to perfectionism. That's the root of the cause. Is that how you phrase it? That's the root. And then, the cause is you go and try to be perfect because it's easier than having to face the other shit.
Yeah. You deal with a lot of C-suite executives, like we said before, and a lot of successful people have very big egos, right? Yeah. Because you can't really get to a very successful point without having a little bit of an ego, right?
Of course. Yeah.
So how do you teach these executives to not have as big of an ego as they usually do?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to answer this in a way that you probably weren't in. I'll say this: ego is normal, and it's quite honestly, it's good. Like we all have ego. We all have, we have our id, our ego, persona, all these things. Ego is fine. It's normal. It's useful. There's a reason it exists. I wouldn't even say it's about having less of an ego, but as far as like bringing those guys down to earth, usually they're operating in at such a level to where they have so many high level things to have to focus on that the easiest thing to forget is just, well, not even right in front of them. It's right inside of them. It's what are your values? What are your roles and goals that you have? Like the roles meaning father, business owner, like all these things. What are the roles that you play in your life, and what goals and actions are associated with what it means to you to be the best version of yourself in each of these roles? Because most people with an ego, they're going to want to be the best at everything. So if you get them really clear, it depends on what the purpose of them coming to me for. If they're not coming to me to be a better father or like whatever it is, then I'm not going to focus on something they're not necessarily wanting help on, unless they realize that they need the help, and then we can go that direction. But I'll play it this way. You might think of the stereotypical elite CEO guy. Maybe that means he's at work too much. Maybe he has family, kids that they don't get to see him as often, or he's not really being the best father to his children. Well, his ego is gonna want to say, well, no, I'm a good father, like all these things. But if he's not clear on that being, obviously he knows that that's a role that he plays, but if he doesn't see it on paper in front of him outside of his own mind to say that objectively, this is an important pillar of my life, and shit, here are the goals, here are the things that I would need to do on a regular daily, weekly, monthly basis in order to be the best version of this role. Shit, I'm not checking that box. I'm not checking that box. Damn, I really am. I'm not as good as that.
Well, how do you go about telling your clients that they're not doing a good job at certain things without them getting irritated or putting up that guard?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I don't tell them anything.
You let them tell you.
I let them tell me, or realize through the work that we do. It's not about like, and I, of course, sometimes I'll give an opinion if someone asks, or sometimes if I think it's important enough, I'll give an unsolicited opinion. But for the most part, it's all about questions and frameworks and systems that I can fall back on with those clients, to where if they feel like everything's so perfect, this is nuanced because I would have to know why they're coming to me. But if they are in this, pie in the sky world where they're just perfect, well, then they're probably not coming to me in the first place. They have to have an inkling of something being misaligned for them to come to me. From there, we can go through my framework. We can understand, how to fully encompass who they are and what they do, what their goals are. And through that framework, they'll see the gaps. And then I can just kind of lead them down the path of, what's going on here? Are you at home X days of the week for X amount of time? Like whatever their criteria is, I let them give it to me, and then that clarifies everything.
Yeah.
So, definitely. It's all individualized, so it's hard to just blanket statement that type of thing, but yeah.
Well, here's a scenario. There's a C-suite founder, executive of a big corporation in Miami, and their whole family, they're working 80 plus hours a week. Mm-hmm. And their family, they don't see their kids a lot. Their wife's asking for them to come home, and their family life's kind of falling apart. How would you help that client?
Yeah. So
and if you need to ask any questions, I can pretend like I'm that client.
Yeah, no. I actually know who you're talking about. No, I'm just kidding. So first it would have to matter. Is this something that you feel, well, if they're coming to me saying that it's causing a rift in their marriage or whatever, then that's something we can address. But where I would start is, okay, well, let's think about the idealized. So I have a framework. It's idealization, visualization, verbalization, materialization. So the first is idealization. So no matter what the ball game is, if it's finances, if it's family, if it's faith, if it's identity or physical health, whatever it is, the first step is idealize. What is the end of the rainbow vision that you have for what your family looks like? So, you don't have to fully explain, but what I would say is ask, like, okay, paint this picture for me. First off, like if they're early on in the marriage, how many kids do you have at the end of the rainbow? How much time per day or per week are you spending with them? All these things, like idealize that perfect picture. And that's not to say that that's how it has to end up, but it gives you a baseline. From there, you can say, okay, what would it mean to actually have that? Where are you currently? Figure out the gap. From there, you can start to actually visualize through now having the ideal picture. This is kind of where the rehearsal comes in and all these things. With the whole kids, family thing, I'm not going to sit there and act like I'm a family counselor expert or anything because I don't have kids or anything like that. So my only path forward with them authentically is I'm not going to tell them how to parent or you need to be home X, Y, Z. I can't give them that formula. I don't have that experience necessarily. But what I do know is I can hold them accountable to what they feel is right for them. So without going on too much of a tangent, I think it's establish that baseline, establish that idealized vision, take them through the process of figuring out where the gap is. Once you are able to set a course for like the stepping stones, like getting through bridging that gap, like what are the stepping stones across that bridge to bring you to where you want to be, then that's where the process of visualize what it looks like. And that means even the mental rehearsals. Now, I can't say I've done this a ton with the matter of kids, but with a lot of other things, it's actually visualizing you leaving your desk at X time, getting in your car, going home, and the feeling that you'll feel seeing your kids. Like that's something that happens in your brain where now your brain thinks, well, that could have been real. It doesn't really know. And that's a very reductionist way of saying it. But like, obviously, consciously whether it's happened or not, but your brain, as far as your neural wiring and the neurons firing, it kind of fires towards those feelings, which then create a feedback loop of you wanting to go and repeat that feeling because it releases dopamine, all that kind of stuff. After you visualize that, you go through the actions of verbalizing it, and through our words and our self-talk and the actual statements that we say to reaffirm, I am a committed father, husband, this, that, whatever the language is, verbalize it. Say who you are, not who you want to be. Like you've already established, like you need to become a better father. So therefore you are a committed father because you're in the process of getting to that. So you have to be that. You can't just say, oh yeah, I will be, because then it'll always be in the future. Nothing will happen. Then you verbalize that, and then the materialization part comes in with, okay, let's get back to that action plan. Let's make sure all these three things come together, or specifically the verbalization, the visualization comes together for you to actually materialize and make it happen, come to fruition, that you are doing these things that we agreed need to happen daily, monthly, weekly to align with this role in your life. So that's what I call my self-actualization component of my coaching. So I have a self-actualization planner. It kind of establishes that baseline of values, goals, vision, and roles, all those things. And then, you go through that process.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Now, to transition more into the business and sales aspect of your company, what are the main funnels you focus on to source customers?
Yeah. So mostly a lot of what I love to do, and when I mentioned I have some stuff coming out for specifically the closers and sales professionals, most of what I love to do is one-on-one, because I can go a lot deeper with clients. That a lot of times will come through word of mouth, through social media has been my main focus,
like
actually.
People DMing you?
Just social media, people DMing me, a combination of my YouTube, pushing people to my Instagram, who can then, or vice versa, who can then either apply to have a call with me, just to, I call them clarity calls. We just get clear on where you're at, if we're a good fit, how I can help, and then we set the path forward. So that's one thing, is they see my content and they'll sign up, or they'll follow me, and sometimes I'll take a look, and if they seem like, hey, I have some availability, let me reach out, and I'll just reach out to people that follow me. It can be a mix of things. On the B2B side, most of that's going to be directly through just cold outreach, email marketing. I don't do a ton of that relative to just being able to work one-on-one or one-to-many. So what I'm building out now is specifically a good program for closers, for sales professionals, where they're going to be able to go through a lot of my materials related to being better as an entrepreneur, being better as an individual, going through upgrading your iOS, your internal operating system, to be able to, perform better as a closer. That's going to be like a track that I'll be releasing for the new year, and that's going to allow me to kind of go one-to-many a little bit more effectively, because my time is limited and I want to be able to connect on a deeper level with more people. So that's the strategy. It's a little bit of social media mixed with just kind of guerrilla messaging, email, cold outreach, and I've even had the thought of just walking into businesses sometimes, but again, I love the one-on-one connection sometimes. So usually the B2B stuff, if it flows to me and it pops up and it's something that makes sense, I'll go down that road, but I'm usually pretty focused on just my clients. Yeah.
And like you said, your clarity calls are all about getting to know if you can actually help your client. Yeah. Has there ever been a time where you're like, I don't know if we're a good fit, or I don't know if I could even help you?
For sure. Yeah. It happens. And as much as I obviously, of course, I want to help everyone, but and I never let finances get in the way of who I work with and who I don't. So it's never because of that. It's never like, oh, you can't afford this.
There are ways to work around that too.
Yeah, that I always work around, but it's more so like if they're giving me indications that they aren't committed, or they're using fixed language, like fixed mindset language, to where
what does that mean?
So, there's growth mindsets, there's fixed mindsets. So a lot of times I'll pay attention to how someone, and this is partly a reason why people need to open themselves up to be willing to come to me or speak with a therapist or any other coach as well. It's like, I'll listen to someone's language. Are they saying a lot of I am statements that leave them fixed in a certain identity of, oh, well, I'm not someone that, I have so many examples that come to mind that I probably shouldn't share, but I am someone that X, and it clearly indicates to me I'm not willing to change this part of myself. So there's sometimes where I'll hear certain identity statements that are just not aligned with who I look for in clients. Like, I want people that are fired up about improving themselves, that know that they're capable of more, and all these things. So if I feel like, because the last thing that I would want is for someone to come in, start to work with me, because a lot of closers, or I'm sure a lot of coaches actually face this, because they might have closers placed for them. I don't have any closers. I make sure I take all of my sales calls, if you want to call them that, my clarity calls. Like, they're not sales calls, that Their clarity calls for my clarity, for their clarity. So I won't ever have a closer close for me on a one-to-one relationship. That makes no sense. But what I'm sure a lot of coaches face, and this will kind of answer your question, is they'll use their tactics that they learned in this course, because it's all about tactics and closing and pressure and all these things. And someone, all right, they finally relent to your 10th rolled objection or whatever, and they finally just pay you the freaking whatever because you've pressured them into this and whatever. And then they start the relationship, and then they realize, like, hey, this is not a good fit. They're either not a client that's open to doing the work and committing their time and effort into this self-growth, because that's the hardest part. The finances are nothing. It's the effort of actually doing the work. That's the other thing. So if they don't do that, how does that reflect on you as a coach? Like now they just paid you a bunch of money and they have nothing to show for it because you pressured them into coming on with you when they weren't ready. So if someone's not ready to do the work on themselves, I'm not going to try to force them to. I'm going to be in their corner. They can always, like, I'll usually give almost everyone my number, and they can always shoot me a text, or if it's just DM, then that's cool too. But if they're not ready to do the work, then I'm not going to be here to force them to. Yeah. So I think that's a situation where you need to have some integrity as a coach to say, like, come back to me when you're ready to do this. Cause it's just so easy to just take the money or try to pressure them in. But again, coming back to that sales thing, it just leaves you feeling so drained, because now you're worried. Oh, well, what if they think I'm bad? What if they leave a bad review? What if they tell people this or that? And I don't want to deal with that. I want to know that the clients I'm working with are ready, and that I'm going to give them an incredible transformation, and that they're going to be a different person than they were 30, 60, 90 days ago.
For sure.
So
what's the importance of energy as a business owner?
Yeah.
How do people get their energy drained, and how can you keep trying to build more and more energy and saving more time?
Yeah. I mean, again, science, not woo-woo, but like energy is everything. And I could take it the metaphysical route, like, oh, everything is energy, hug a tree and put your feet on the grass. I mean, I think there's clear science to indicate that there's something there. Right. And you might not be religious or believe in like a specific higher power, but like, how can someone be watching this right now and see my face, however that science works, but the way that we communicate doesn't carry an energy, the way that our posture, like all these things carry energy, right? Even the vibrations of my sound that goes through the air. And so someone else can hear it. Like that's energy moving through So that's just to say, what I've reduced energy down to the best that I can is there's really four main pillars of our energy, or quadrants, or cores in a battery, if you want to imagine it that way. We have our physical energy, our ability to move our body, exercise, all those, express ourselves. And then we have our mental, emotional energy, the cognitive energy is another one. Cognitive and emotional is actually separate. So mental, emotional, cognitive is a little bit more unique. So physical energy, emotional energy, cognitive energy, and then financial and social energy I kind of group together for a reason. So those are like the four quadrants, that I see we experience on a day-to-day. The way that we burn out is actually by not allowing that energy to flow. And I love that word flow because it means so many things. There's a psychology of flow that I love going into, and that relates to business, that relates to sports and all those things, and how we can perform at a higher level. So there's flow in that regard. But thinking of energy flowing, one clear example: if a river is running, there's life flowing through it. The moss on the rocks and all the fish and wildlife that run through it. It's beautiful. It's vibrant. It's moving. The sound creates energy, right? But when you go to a static pond, it's toxic. There's no life. It's like all, bacteria on the top. It's silent. It's just like it's because nothing is moving. There's no energy flowing through it. So if you want to just take nature and apply that to humans, if we're not allowing ourselves to release energy in any of those four quadrants, those cores of the battery are going to begin to overflow. They're going to decay over time, which if you think of a lithium battery, what that leads to is an explosion. Yeah. And when people think of anxiety, depression, all these things, even Marcus Aurelius, I think, calls depression or he calls emotions weights on the mind, which means that if we allow our emotions to build up and we don't release emotional energy through crying, venting, therapy, like whatever it is, or what you could do is you can release emotional energy through physical movement. So through any of those things, then we're gonna feel heavier and heavier. And
whenever something's going on with me, I go work out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think that's one of the precursors for depression and anxiety is you're letting something stagnate. So you're
not taking action on something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is where I come back to extreme ownership and accountability. I preface to everyone, like I'm in the world of psychology. I've been in it for over a decade, and obviously depression is a real thing. There's science backing. There can be hereditary reasons why someone might be depressed or in that state, and SSRIs are perfectly okay. So selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, that's the medication that people might take if they're depressed or on anxiety medication. Those are totally okay, and they shouldn't be vilified, and there's a place for that to exist. However, I will, till the day I die, always believe that there is something that you can do to change your circumstance. And it's not about, oh, I'm depressed and the world's against me and all these things. Like if you're not taking the action in any of those quadrants, and I can, I actually made a little YouTube video breaking those down. But if you're not doing something to release energy in each of those 4 quadrants, then you're at fault for when you feel overloaded. And so like people use burnout all the time. I think burnout's a hoax. I think you're overcharged and you need to release that energy. And what that does is open up space for more energy to flow in. So you could argue, okay, if there's 4 quadrants and you can replenish any of them through any of the others, well, if I release a ton of physical energy and I work out and I take care of my health, maybe more financial energy will flow in. Maybe I'll make more money. Yeah. Or social energy will flow in because I'm in better shape. People see me as more attractive. People want to be around me. And when people want to be around someone, what does that lead to? More opportunity to make money. Or I have a shit ton of money. People want to be around me. So like any of those things play into each other. If I'm emotionally stable, if I'm not totally depressed or whatever I want to, like whatever those, and I am depressed. It's like you are, well, I'm Jesse, but what, like,
I was going to ask you, do you believe in chronic depression?
So if you're speaking about it as like the clinical diagnosis, then I would say, yes, I believe that it is possible. And there's certain circumstances that could lead to that. And sometimes it's out of people's control. People that are,
someone saw something horrific in front of them, like a parent died in front of them or something.
Yeah, there's that. Even that, I think, that's traumatic. That's for sure traumatic. So short answer is yes. I don't want to get into any hot water. Actually, I love being in hot water, but
Let's get controversial here.
Yeah, chronic depression is a clinical diagnosis. I think that it's perfectly, I shouldn't say acceptable. It's valid, but it doesn't have to end there. Like, are you going to just still continue? And this is part of the healthcare system. This is the issue, is we just continue to try to treat the symptoms instead of the cause. And so if you continue to just try to treat the chronic depression and SSRIs and like just do the things that make you kind of come back down the baseline versus what can actually solve the initial cause, then you're always going to be in that downward spiral. But yes, it's real. Still, there's always something that you can do. And it's about figuring out the way where it doesn't seem so. No one's going to take action on something if the outcome isn't immediate enough. And that's part of the problem, is we all want immediate gratification. But there's ways to do that where you can build reward loops in your brain physically. I could bring up another controversial take of mine, but you can physically build reward loops in your brain to push you towards taking actions that are beneficial. So a lot of people will say, oh, it's just discipline. Just go to the gym and just do it when you don't feel like doing it. And that's great. But someone experiencing chronic depression who doesn't physically feel like they have the ability to move their body and get to the gym, it's hard to just say, oh, go to the gym. But what you can do is you can try to build motivation over discipline. And some people is like, oh, discipline over motivation. Well, bear with me for a second. Motivation is way more powerful than discipline, because discipline means doing something despite not really feeling like doing it, versus an actual chemical reward loop in your brain that says, go and do this thing again. That's what motivation is, tied to dopamine. And a lot of people use dopamine a little loosely these days, but that's what motivation is. And I would argue that that chemical construct in the brain is a little more powerful than just forcing yourself to do something you don't feel like doing. And that same reward loop is why people are addicted to drugs, alcohol, all those things. But if you want to take action on something and you're not disciplined, and all you hear is everyone saying, be more disciplined, and then you sit there like, fuck, why can't I be more disciplined? Why can't I follow through with my actions? Well, start to implement tiny little reward loops towards micro actions that get you closer and closer to that bigger action. Mm-hmm. So if you're a sedentary person and you sit on the couch all day and you hear everyone talking about how they go to the gym every single day without fail at 5 a.m. because they're just so disciplined, and you're like, well, that is just totally not me. Well, yeah, you're right. Because if you can't change your identity, you're not going to change your actions. But it can play both ways. You can start changing your actions slowly to start to shift your identity as well. I do think mostly everything starts with identity. But in that example, you don't go to the gym, you're sedentary, all these things. Well, think about what it would feel like to stand up, walk around your house in one lap and be able to reward yourself. Like, think of operant conditioning. Go and look up operant conditioning, the Skinner box, and how they would kind of encourage rats to press the button to either release food or stop the shock. This is going to go wild here, but basically operant conditioning, if you're familiar with the Skinner box, high school or college experiment, B.F. Skinner put rats in a box, and he had food that would release when they press this button, and that would reward them. That would be a positive reward. It's a reinforcer that's added to the environment. That's a positive reward. That would be the food. And they would get the food, and they would go and press the button again to get more food. Standard. Okay. If I give you a donut, you'll probably do something again, and I'll give you a donut. I can train that behavior, whatever. The classic parenting trick as well. But what they found is that he also implemented, as part of that experiment, a negative reinforcement, which was, so the positive reinforcement is adding the food when they press the button. The negative reinforcement is, and negative meaning it's being removed from the environment. He would have a subtle shock in the box that would shock the rats, and nothing to really harm them or kill them, but just enough to where they were really uncomfortable, that they would do anything to make it stop. And what they did is they would press the button, the shock would stop, and they wouldn't be shocked or whatever. When the shock came back on, they would press the button. And what he found is that for the rats that were being shocked versus the rats that were being fed food, there was a much quicker response to press that button when they were feeling the shock versus to get the food. Mm-hmm. So negative reinforcements, setting yourself up for something where you can avoid a greater pain instead of trying to seek a mild reward, it's probably going to be more effective. So if you can think of this can be quite dark, but if you were to think of someone that's sedentary and you're telling them, oh, just work out in like however much time, in a few months from now, maybe you'll lose a few pounds and you'll feel a little better. Or stay on your ass for just a few more weeks, you'll be dead. And that greater pain, like, you can go as dark at whatever direction you want, but if you can inflict a greater immediate pain to inaction, you're going to be able to spark action much more effectively than trying to spark it with like a distant reward.
I think that's a good sales. Yeah. I think it's a good sales.
Perfect in sales
positive, because instead of trying to show them where they can get to, you try to find out what their pain is and express that pain to them and extract that pain, and then they'll be more motivated to get the goal.
And I will say, like, with that, you wield a ton of power. So you have to use that intentionally and sparingly, in my opinion, because then you get too deep into the, like, if your job as a salesperson is just to make people feel like shit to get their money, then that's not how I want to operate. So so you want to be able to use that with the most integrous of intentions.
Yeah.
Just to highlight that.
And the final question, you spoke about this on your social media as well. In a world where people are always comparing themselves to other people, how do you teach someone to compete with themselves internally?
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that. Teach someone to compete with themselves. There's a few directions I could take that. The self-accountability, the internal accountability, I think is huge, of training your mind to seek everything that happens as a result of your actions or inactions. That strips away the uncontrollables of what other people think or what other people are doing or anything else. Because as soon as you try to control uncontrollables, that's where your mind spirals. So first thing, control the controllables, which means
Control what you can control. Stoicism right there.
Exactly. Yeah. That's stoicism at its finest. That means reflecting inward and figuring out how can you be better. And instead of trying to compete with someone that isn't you, that's on a path that you aren't on, or somewhere that you haven't been, just compete with the version of yourself yesterday. What did you do yesterday that it could be that, and how could you do it better today? And again, the more you zoom in on that, the more it alleviates you of all these thoughts of basically trying to live someone else's journey. Like you want to interview Alex Hormozi, but are you going to look at someone that has, $100 million, whatever his whole, like however many companies he owns and how he operates? You can't possibly. And it doesn't seem like you're on that path of wanting to be a private equity. Yeah, I don't know what your goals are, but the point is, he might be someone that you look up to, but you're not going to look at the path that he was on and say, oh, I'm doing something wrong, because, it's like you're not going to look at an astronaut and say, oh, what am I doing wrong? Because I'm not an astronaut yet. So why are you doing it for someone that, that has a totally different business than you, totally different values than you, totally different personality or psychology than you? It's just, and that's part of the dangers of social media. It's just nonstop comparison of people being thrown at you that are doing all these different things. You have OnlyFans creators, you have vloggers that just run around like goofballs and make a shit ton of money. I mean, how can you possibly compare yourself to that wide variety of people? It's like, who are you? I consider myself in the past, I was extremely introverted. I guess I would identify as that, but I've done the work to be able to present myself more socially or outgoing or whatever. But I'm not going to go look at freaking Tony Robbins or someone that, maybe he was introverted or whatever, however you would identify. He has a totally different psychology than me. He might be the guy that just gets so energized by going and being out on stage and interacting with all these people. That shit would drain me. And it does drain me. It's useful. It's energy that I'm putting out there. I'm draining my batteries in a good way, that social energy. But to be able to sustain that isn't what I am looking for. That's why I'm not building a multinational speaking business. So however you want to compare it, it's just like you have to be clear, and that's what my self-actualization planner is for, because you have to be clear on your vision, values, roles, and goals. Like if what you're envisioning is not that, then why are you holding yourself to that standard? If your personality or psychology, the values that you have, is not representative of what you're comparing yourself to, then fucking stop. So social detox, dopamine detox, get off social media, delete it all. If it's not serving you, delete it for a while or get off of it. For me, it's a struggle because I know I need to post every day, and I, find myself caught in that rabbit hole occasionally here and there. But if you're not posting and you're just consuming and you're not feeling better after being on it than you were before, then don't go on it. Yeah, shit. I don't know if I answered that question, but it's just so much there because I've gone through it and I still go through it. But it's like I look at other sales trainers and I'm like, oh shit, well, I'm not Andy Elliott. Well, then I reflect on my values, how I perceive sales and how I want to carry myself. And I'm like, you're right. I'm not Andy Elliott. So that's okay. Thing, yeah. I don't care. That's not to say there's nothing wrong with Andy Elliott, but that's not me. So why should I compare myself to what he has?
For sure.
All that stuff.
Great.
I don't know why he's the first sales guy that came to my mind, but Jeremy Miner, same shit,
Well, Jesse, I appreciate you coming on. Where can people find you on socials?
Yeah. So full name, Jesse H. Hoffman, full government name on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. I'm always available in the DMs, jessehoffman.com. We'll take you probably to my YouTube, but that's it.
Awesome. Thanks.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
All right, man. Great talking to you.
Thanks,
This was
man.
awesome.